Nebraska Farm Bureau says the time for talk is done. They say it's time for action on property taxes. Coming up on NTV's Grow. Big international news, Canada and Mexico retaliate over country of origin labeling. We'll hear from two sides of the debate. Plus, nitrate's a growing concern. We'll have more on proposed regulations. Get ready to grow. Another down year. The latest long-term economic outlook shows the egg sector will continue to struggle. Other areas will see some growth. Net farm income dropped to $4.5 billion in 2015. That's a nearly 40% drop from 2013. Forecasters predict an additional drop of about 11% in 2016 to a 6-year low. They project a rebound in 2017, income to grow in 2018. Egg producers should be able to grow a profit, they say, in 2017 by increasing efficiency, productivity, and better cost management. Still talking dollars, farmers demand tax relief. It's certainly going to be a big debate in the Nebraska legislature in this coming year. Here's more from Nebraska Farm Bureau and Nebraska Farmers Union.
The time for talk is over. The time for action is now.
When farmers are 3% of the population but pay 30% of the cost of education, there's near universal agreement in agriculture. The system is broken.
Farmers and ranchers pay way more property tax than others, and that's where we need to look for balance in funding education.
The pinch is really on, and so we need to really focus on this as a problem.
Farmers would like to see fundamental changes to the way Nebraska pays for schools. But a small fix may be the best lawmakers can do. They're going into a short 60-day session. And urban lawmakers argue their districts have challenges of diversity and poverty and need a higher level of state funding.
They've essentially absorbed most of the state aid to education funding. Rural districts are on their own.
In other words, many districts don't get state dollars. Senator and rancher Al Davis says one idea would be to put more money into property tax credits.
But we have a $130 million hole in the budget already, so that's going to be hard to find.
Farm groups would like to see some of the burden on income and sales taxes,
because they're more fair based on ability to pay.
Senator Davis is part of a committee that's been studying those issues and said he went into the process with doubts.
And I hate to say I'm still not optimistic, but you just have a need for more money, essentially, is what it boils down to. And without any more money, you're just arranging the dollars on the table from one entity to another.
Taxes are number one for Farm Bureau, but they have other priorities. Expanding opportunities for livestock is a big emphasis. Regulation continues to be a concern. President Steve Nelson telling members it seems like the EPA is always finding new ways to go after farmers and telling the story of agriculture. Farm Bureau says negative comments in the news and social media shows the need to talk about responsible farming practices. Senator Mike Johanns receives Farm Bureau's top honor. The former Secretary of Agriculture, former governor, and former senator was awarded the Silver Eagle Award by Nebraska Farm Bureau. Johanns was born and raised on a dairy farm. Farm Bureau leaders say Johanns has been a strong advocate for Nebraska farmers and ranchers. Canada says it'll retaliate quickly with $1 billion in tariffs because of concerns over American meat labels. Here's much more on country of origin labeling. Made in the USA, meat labels may seem like a good idea to consumers, but to Canada and Mexico, it's discrimination. And the World Trade Organization agrees, giving those countries power to assess $1 billion in tariffs on American meat.
That's real dollars that for me as a producer will affect my bottom line if we don't get something fixed here.
Hog and corn farmer Mark McHarg wants to avoid sanctions at a time when markets are slumping.
Well, this makes the market nervous, and anytime there's a lot of ups and downs in an industry, any industry, it just makes people nervous about investing. So this is another reason that I think we need to get this fixed.
This was our signature issue.
On the other side of farm politics, Roger Johnson, National Farmers Union president, says meat labels should stay but be voluntary.
The reason COOL was put in place to begin with is because we had folks in the meatpacking industry that were bringing in foreign animals, slaughtering them, and labeling that product as a product of the U.S.
But Farm Bureau says with sanctions coming, Congress needs to repeal the law.
We're okay with COOL based on if it was WTO compliant. Well, it's obviously not compliant.
Meanwhile, Farmers Union says it'll keep fighting for labels they say farmers want.
Producers have been strong supporters of country of origin label. They're proud of what we do.
Farmers continue to speak out on the government decision about ethanol, that renewable fuel standard. NTV's Megan Johnson talked with state and national commodity leaders and has more reaction.
It's a many-sided issue and really depends on the commodity or group, with oil companies saying the numbers are too high and crop associations saying they're too low or okay for now. Corn and soybean leaders view the final renewable fuel numbers from different perspectives, but agree the EPA's levels are higher and better than the ones first proposed back in June.
We are glad that the number came up from the original numbers they showed, but they still stayed well below the statutory levels, and we're disappointed that they didn't follow the law and put statutory levels back out.
That's the thought from national and Nebraska corn growers, saying the 14.5 billion gallons of corn-based ethanol required in 2016 is short of the 15 billion written in the RFS law, but waived by the EPA. Meanwhile, biodiesel levels are set to march steadily upward through 2017 to 2 billion gallons. News soybean producers say is good but not great, as supply is already abundant.
The thing is, the demand has already been met, or they're able to meet the demand right now, so it doesn't really make a lot of difference. It's just the insurance that we have, the consumption of that product.
The American Soybean Association president says even though he's pleased with the numbers, he knows it will take more than his crop to keep ag strong in the renewable fuel market.
We'll work closely with corn going forward to try to make sure those ethanol levels come up too, because I'm a big believer, and it's been a deal in my presidency that all the commodity groups got to work together and we can't leave one sector behind.
The RFS levels are targets to meet, says Wade Cowan, and Wesley Spurlock says more than $200 million is coming in the next year and a half to improve ethanol infrastructure. So leaders say they'll have to push harder for higher renewable fuel volumes next time.
Those are things that are beyond our control to set, so I think we take them as they are, we get back to work, and try to make the changes that we need to make to get it where we want it to be.
Some livestock groups are on different sides of the RFS numbers as well. The National Chicken Council, for one, says the higher levels are bad for poultry producers and will raise food and fuel prices.
Food for health. That's the focus of a new initiative on all 4 University of Nebraska campuses. The new initiative will expand research into food systems, health, and the environment. The aim is to include faculty from across the university's 4 campuses in research projects. It's the result of a challenge by Hank Bounds, who wants faculty on all 4 campuses to engage with one another, essentially functioning as one university. Elsewhere on the University of Nebraska Lincoln campus, the National Drought Mitigation Center is looking for a new director. The group that keeps an eye on drought is celebrating 2 decades, had a 20th anniversary celebration this past week. The center includes 20 faculty and staff, up from 6 when it began. Nitrate levels are rising near Grand Island, so the Central Platte NRD may put new regulations in place, hoping to get things under control.
In these areas along the river,
some farmers could be paying the price for too much of a good thing. Decades of fertilizer use has resulted in groundwater pollution, with nitrate levels on the rise in southern Hall and northern Hamilton counties.
That's really the main issue, is keeping our water, the nitrate level in our water at a level below the drinking water standard, so our water is safe to drink for everyone.
Hundreds of thousands of acres along the Central Platte are already regulated. Now more areas may move to a second phase of regulation.
You know, we don't like putting on regulations any more than producers like having regulations put on them, but it's our job. I mean, that's to take care of our groundwater quality and keep an eye on it and address it if it becomes an issue is really what the NRD is all about.
Our area has been in at least phase 2 for a long time.
Board member Ed Keyes is one of the most regulated areas, so he speaks from experience when he says this room full of farmers can adjust.
Not a huge deal.
farmers would have to submit crop reports online and do soil and water testing. The big thing is no fall application of fertilizer. Farmers say it's not ideal, but best handled locally.
As farmers, we have an obligation to do whatever we can do to make water quality what it needs to be.
These rules aren't final just yet. The next step is for the Central Platte Board to take a look next week.
It took 50 years to get to where we're at, and it's going to take a number of years to get them back down. But we do have the information to show that it can come down.
Jack Torpy was born in Grand Island in 1919. His father, one of the founders of the Grand Island Horse and Mule Market, which shipped as many as 16,000 head of horses and mules a week, and for a time, the largest horse market in the world. The folks behind the American Doorstop Project have been working to tell that story. They say Jack Torpy was one of the last old-time cattle buyers, and while they had visited with him, sadly, they won't be able to capture his story now as hoped. Jack Torpy was 96. When we come back, we'll talk issues with Nebraska Farm Bureau.